sports reporter Jack Rosser. Welcome to you both. Before we chat, let's quickly run you through the back pages. And we'll start with The Sun. The back page splashes with eberechieze. The headline reads, all to Eze / easy, of course. Star Ibera leads Prem clean sweep. They also carry the news of Nottingham Forest's 2-2 draw with Real Betis in the Europa League. Anthony's late strike hits the post, and news from the Ryder Cup. These quotes coming from Justin Rose on Donald Trump, who's expected to be there on Friday. In the Telegraph, Rory McIlroy to silence us yobs at the Ryder Cup in New York as the build-up to that Ryder Cup continues. And Anthony again making this newspaper as well. Anthony makes his point. United reject scores late as Betis hold Forest. In the Times here, quotes from Wayne Rooney, where he said, "I'd be dead but for Colleen," discussing the support that his wife has given him with his struggles with alcohol over the years. They also cover Eze of the mark for Arsenal. More security at Ryder Cup, again with that visit from President Trump. And Draper wants prize pot hike. How about this in the Mirror Online? Jeremy Cross writes, Kobbie Mainoo ready to leave Man United in January. And that's despite new Ruben Amorim talks. Lots to discuss there going on, as always, at Manchester United. OK, let's start with the Carabao Cup and the back page of The Sun. And Jack, this was a victory for Arsenal, but they laboured to that victory. Is it fair to say? What did you make of the performance?
Yeah, I think all too easy in the end, I suppose, as the headline says there. But they did struggle at times, didn't they? It should have been far more comfortable. I suppose it's a benefit for Mikel Arteta that they didn't really have to get out of second gear to get past Port Vale. You obviously wouldn't expect that from them, but there was a number of big names in the side. A good night, really, in terms of Eze getting his first goal for the club. But it will just add to that sort of sense around Arsenal, really, that after the Manchester City game at the weekend, where there were accusations of Mikel Arteta being a bit too cautious. He was very bullish coming back against that yesterday. But I suppose that will now drag into the Newcastle game at the weekend. If they can't go out there and put on a real front foot attacking game and rack up the goals against Port Vale, then what will they manage to do against Newcastle? And really, Arteta can say whatever he wants about how attacking they are and how much he wants to go for it. They need to show this evidence. So really, it's a game that, in the grand scheme of things, this early in the tournament, doesn't matter too much either way. But he would have wanted it to be far more comfortable. But obviously, the important thing is that they do go through.
Yeah, Shaban, how frustrated will Arteta be with the fact that he had to bring on Declan Rice and Leandro Trossard in the final 10 minutes? Because I'm not convinced that was part of the plan, but he felt that they needed a bit more punch.
Well, it's all about the finishers, isn't it, Jess? That's what we've been hearing recently from Mikel Arteta. The guys come on, they do their job, and at the end of the day, they get the win. And I don't think many of us were massively surprised that Arsenal were going to beat Port Vale in this game, with absolutely no disrespect to Port Vale whatsoever. You know, they come away, they've got the job done. It'll be all eyes on the draw and looking ahead to the weekend now for Arsenal, because as that conversation keeps going round and round, there's a little bit of pressure on Mikel Arteta to provide silverware for the club and for the fans this season. And, you know, there were some good performances in there. Great to see Eze off the mark and get his goal. Arsenal fans will be happy about that. I'm sure Eze himself will take confidence from getting his first goal for Arsenal. But also Miles Lewis-Skelly, I mean, you talk about maybe a little bit of criticism that he's been getting from elements and portions of the fan base over the last little while. He had a good game tonight, and that back pass, that kind of back heel from him to Eze, just to put him on a plate and finish it, I thought showed a nice unit tonight. Yeah, you kind of, maybe fans were looking for them to blow them away, but at the end of the day, job done, on to the next.
Yeah, you Arsenal fans will want to take the positives, won't they, Jack? The fact that, you know, Trossard was only on the pitch 5 minutes before he got his goal, neatly tucked away in the corner. A first goal for Eze early on in his career as well. A lot for Arsenal to be happy about with this match, though.
There is, you know, those are the key points as well, getting some, you know, good minutes into players like Miles Lewis-Skelly in terms of maybe kicking on. And I think as well, while it wasn't, you know, blowing them away and all singing, all dancing, I was at Chelsea last night, and they were really under the pump against a League One team for quite a long time and looking really rather shaky. So you would much rather have it where it's a bit laboured, but it's still comfortable enough to get through and progress. And while Chelsea are still through, it showed a lot of sore points there and a lot of things that they need to work on. And Mikel Arteta certainly won't have been as upset as Enzo Maresca was with his players last night.
Yeah, Bukayo Saka got some minutes on the pitch. A bit of an injury scare for him, Shaban, but, we'll see how that pans out. But good to see him back and as he continues his recovery.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Bukayo Saka, I mean, he's such a creative player, such a playmaker in the team, the amount of assists that he can gather for Arsenal along the way. And when Saka's not in the squad, they really, really miss him. I sometimes think he can be underappreciated for how much he provides for Arsenal. But that moment where he was stood on, it really connected with his ankle. I think a lot of Arsenal fans, were watching kind of through their fingers or from behind the couch. But he played on for another 12, 14 minutes before then he made his way off the pitch. So fingers crossed, wrap wee Bukayo Saka up in cotton wool and fingers crossed he'll be all right.
Jack, I know that everyone keeps talking about this new strength in depth that Arsenal have, but they're going to need players like Saka throughout the season, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. I mean, you can have all the depth you want, but you need elite level players, and Bukayo Saka is certainly that. There will be a group of players, Declan Rice among them, David Raya, Saliba, Gabriel, that Mikel Arteta will not want to lose. They've definitely improved in terms of that depth, and they've got some good quality in depth. Noni Madueke is a fine backup for Bukayo Saka, but if they'd maybe sold Saka in the summer, they probably wouldn't have been looking to Madueke to be that regular replacement, somebody that starts in and out at the highest level. Don't forget, I mean, they're playing Port Vale tonight, but they're targeting the later rounds of the Champions League, winning the Premier League title at the end of the season. And if they're to get there and beat the opposition, they will need to beat on a regular basis to reach those highs. They're going to need players like Bukayo Saka. We saw after he had a long time out last year, Odegaard was another one as well that had this similarly, that when those players came back, Arsenal's level shifted up by quite a percentage. So keeping Saka fit and firing all the way through is going to be really, really crucial if Arsenal are finally going to get over the line.
And they march on into the fourth round, as do Manchester City, who ran out 2-0 winners against Huddersfield. How good is it to see this renaissance of Phil Foden continuing, Shaban? A goal and an assist tonight.
Yeah, it's been quite topical, hasn't it, for the return of the Premier League season from the new season. Again tonight, finding the back of the net and just playing the way that we knew that Phil Foden could play football. And, it happens. We hear from all the pros, the former pros who have played in the game for many, many years. Sometimes you're playing, you're absolutely out your skin, and then something else could be happening and you're a wee bit off it. But he's certainly back to his best. We heard from Pep Guardiola last week talking about Phil Foden at the moment and his form and saying, we're so glad to see Phil back like this. He's a huge addition to the team when he's playing like this. He's been playing out of his skin. Savinho, again tonight, finding the back of the net. But Phil Foden, he's the man of the moment. Just when you think maybe we've seen him at his peak, he just looks unstoppable once again for Manchester City. So a good win for them tonight. What was the stat, Jess? I heard you say it earlier on. They've won it 6 times in the last 12 years or something, Manchester City.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Yeah, always there for you. Huge part of that, Phil Foden. So, on to the next round for them.
Brilliant. Yeah, man of the moment. And England fans will be rubbing their hands with glee because a Phil Foden in form is great news for England with a World Cup on the horizon. Newcastle, big winners against Bradford, 4-1. 2 goals from Joe Linton, 2 goals from Osula. They will play Spurs in the 4th round, Jack. What do you make of that matchup?
I'd imagine everyone at Tottenham is delighted that they're going to be having to drag themselves up to Tyneside in the middle of October in a midweek when they've got Champions League football to be dealing with as well. I'm sure there was a lot of delight in the changing room at Tottenham after that draw came through on the telly. That will be a great game. It's obviously the highlight of the draw that's just come out. It's a good matchup. It's 2 teams that seem like they're ready to go for it, a bit more old school maybe in terms of the way they go at games, a bit more direct and up and down. So it should be an end-to-end game. A good result for Newcastle, of course. Joe Linton getting a couple of goals is a massively popular figure. But I think Eddie Howe's been talking about Osula and maybe how he had a difficult end to to the transfer window with everything that was going on at Newcastle, and whether he might have been leaving the club, and with Walter Marder and Johan Wissa coming in as well. But with that depth there, they've lost Isak, and you're never going to replace him. If they can have Asula confident as an option to either compete with, to certainly compete with, and also provide cover for Walter Marder as he settles in, then it's a fantastic thing. So these are where these games are helpful for managers like Eddie Howe, and it would have been for Thomas Frank tonight as well. So an awkward trip for them, but they can learn a lot from these games as well.
Yeah, speaking of Thomas Frank, they beat Spurs, and Thomas Frank beat Doncaster 3-0. Shaban, I'm wondering what you think of Thomas Frank's start at Spurs. Do we feel like this Spurs team have a different identity than under Postecoglou now? Are we starting to see that?
Yeah, I think we are starting to see that. I mean, he's such a good manager, Thomas Frank, and he's inherited a good side, a side that had also just won a trophy. So there's a confidence in this squad and in this team as well. But yeah, they're a different Spurs side to what we saw under Ange Postecoglou. And that is a great result for them tonight. Again, you would expect Spurs to beat Doncaster, but as Jack mentioned there earlier on, you come into these ties and they can be very, very tricky for top sides. The opposition can make it harder for them. But Doncaster tonight struggled against Spurs. It probably could have been more for them, but that is a good result. And I'm pretty sure Thomas Frank will be walking away happy with that.
I'm sure he will be. On to Wolves they march on to next, playing bottom of the league, Wolves in their next game. Jack, I'm interested in this because all the Premier League teams won again tonight. The majority won yesterday as well. It just goes to show then, isn't it, how difficult it is for lower leagues to get ahead in this competition?
Well, it is, especially with the seeding now after the changes to Europe. We've got UEFA and the Champions League, the Europa League, the Conference League expanding further and further into the calendar, putting more strain on it. And that's obviously led the Football League and the FA and the powers that be to look at this competition and say, well, we'll seed it and bring them in later, as they have done for a long time, and then keep them apart as well. And the things we love about these cup competitions are the upsets. And it just seems that these smaller clubs are now having more and more of a task to really get these upsets going. If you're having to come up against the biggest side and almost give the bigger sides a pass through into the latter stages. We mentioned already, Shaban referenced the stat about Manchester City winning 6 of the last 12. They do take it seriously when it comes to it. And we've seen a lot of strong teams named. Chelsea the same against Lincoln, even though they struggled. It was a strong side that Enzo Maresca named. I think the squad in total was worth over £500 million. So that's the task that is facing up to a lot of these clubs. As more money comes into the Premier League, these squads get deeper and deeper, and it is a really hard thing for the lower league clubs to compete. So I suppose if we do get a couple of those fairy tale stories, they'll be even more special, but it is a bit sad that it's being further stacked against them.
Yeah. Jack, Shaban, thank you for the moment. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll look at more of the sports stories in the morning's newspapers, including this in the Mail. Look who it is. United reject Anthony ruins Forest's big Euro return. That's next.